Welcome on the Gospel Spice podcast, where you are invited to taste and see that the Lord is good. Gospel Spice is your Christ-centered podcast infused with in-depth biblical flavors and sprinkled with a dash of French culture, guaranteed to spice up your relationship with God. I'm your host, Stephanie Roussel, and here is today's episode. Liz Bell Young, welcome on the Gospel Spice podcast.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay, one of my favorite parts in many of the conversations I have is the conversation we have before we hit record. And you and I have been chatting for like a solid 25 minutes, I think. And I love it. We haven't met, but I feel like I just met a friend. And I know a lot more about you than you do about me because I've had the privilege of reading your book. You made me cry. You made me laugh. And you made me cry just now, which is part of the reason why I have a bit of a nosy voice today is because you made me cry. And yes, I'm getting over a cold as well. And if you have a bit of a nosy voice too, it's because you've been crying too. So we made each other cry in the last 25 minutes, Liz. And I loved you for it already.
Well, thank you. You are a safe place. And I think I knew that listening to other episodes, but then I agree, just like what you get to, even in a short span of 20 minutes, to feel that comfortable with one another is a gift. So thank you.
And it's exactly what we're going to talk about because your book, Let There Be Havens, is about creating havens, big and small, for people to feel comfortable to unwind and be themselves. And I think that's what the Lord has allowed us to give one another in the last few minutes. And so I'm grateful for that. Your book, again, like I said, it's and one of the reviews by one of the endorsements you have someone says that this is the book that we didn't know we needed. And I didn't know I needed your book as much as I did. You made me cry when I was in France reading it a couple of weeks ago. Tell us about, maybe by taking from your own words, in the early pages of the book, you talk about your purpose and then how it takes place. Do you want to use your own words to invite the person watching or listening to this, to invite them in the midst of this conversation?
Oh, yes, I would. I will do that. Thank you. Yes, I do. In the beginning of the book, I kind of just set up like where this comes from and where my heart was positioned. And I went back to the years that I was in graduate school. So this is just a part taken from that when I was, training to be a writer and in art school and all of that. And I got to this place where I was trying to, as we all kind of journey and try to figure out who are we, what are we made for? And I got to this place. So I wrote, I want to pick apples off trees and dream in full sun. I want to tuck children into bed. I want to help people when they're sad, tell them I understand, hand them something beautiful to wrap their hands around. I want to fix things and tidy things and put out placemats for dinner. I want to stack firewood and sweep porches and row boats, bake a cake or two, love an entire family, both inside our home and outside of it. I still want to write books and tell stories, but I finally figured out why, as a way to take care.
And what I didn't know when I initially read those words, but that I can now see, is that you basically give us the entire outline of what you're going to be talking about, because then you talk about all those things in the book and how you've made them happen over the years. One of the first things you talk about that I find so inviting is the instant haven we create when we beam. The power of beaming. Can you tell us about that? Because I find it beautiful, and we can all do that. It can be so daunting because creating a haven sounds like we have to have these massive hospitality skills. No. It has to do with beaming.
Yes.
Tell us more.
Yes. And I know, and I wanted that right at the beginning of the book. I have a few people in my life who do this so beautifully and have done it over me my entire life. But just that, when you first see someone, or when you see them an hour later, they walk back into the room, but just letting yourself light up for them. You're so thankful that they're in your life and that they're present with you. And so just this idea of beaming, I just thought, that is hospitality, like immediately, like delighting in someone, showing them their worth. And Yes, I talk about a friend named Eniola, and she's such a beamer. And so I just wanted to capture that right away. And it's, of course, it's free, right? And I agree, I think there is a lot of sort of or there can be a lot of expectation around like how do we take care of people? How do our houses have to be? How is hospitality? What could it really look like? And I think starting from a place of just like the position of your heart and the expression on your face is a very easy entry into what it means to take care of people.
Mm-hmm. So simple, hey? Yeah. And what I love about it is that it forces me, if I want to welcome someone in a beaming way, it forces me to have that intention in my own heart. And so it
Mm.
positions my heart to give something that I must have received first. So it's there's something very I think when you beam your delight to someone else, it forces you to internalize it too. So there's something very healing about it for myself as well, right?
Oh,
When
I
I
love
do that.
that. Yeah. I should have had you write the end of that chapter.
Oh,
That's
you're right.
wonderful.
I don't think so.
I love that you took that there. Yeah.
So for you, okay, you wrote a book about havens. What has that done to you then? If
Mm.
when we beam to others, when we invite them into the havens we create, if it changes us too.
Yes, well, I started I read a little bit about this, I guess, in the book, but um, I sort of have always wanted to figure out, how do you best take care of each other, and what is God telling us to do, and how to take care of other people. And so I kind of started in this sort of social work kind of, well, that's like a very physical way to care for people. And so I just thought this is the track that I would take, and then ended up, circling to writing, or circling back to writing. um and I think that like what it's done, I think I had a little bit of a hard time believing that it wasn't going to be so like sort of simple, and like the message, I knew what was in my heart. I wanted to offer that to other people, and I sort of had to fight this, well, doesn't everybody kind of know how to take care of one another? Is any of this like um enough to put in a book to sell, and I have, some just really beautiful friendships around me. And so their encouragement that like, you know, you've learned a lot along the way from your parents, from your mentors, from the things that you've gotten to create and write and be a part of. And it's not actually obvious to people, sometimes, or they have this longing to do it, but they don't know then like where to take that longing. How do you actually do this? And so when I talked to the publisher, I just right away they believed in it, and so I thought, okay, then this must strike a chord, and maybe right now, specifically in this time, it strikes a chord because of a lot of the sadness and isolation and division and all of this, and this is really, I would say, a sort of a gentle way of confronting, what I see as breaking us, apart.
Mm. Oh, amen to that. Oh, I completely resonate with that. It's a very gentle, subtle way to create unity and welcoming spaces in a world that is dividing us in every way possible, even among Christians, unfortunately. So,
Yeah.
um, and I agree that when God has given us the ability to do something well, we tend to take it for granted, and we think that everyone else can do it just as well, but it's not so, because we are diverse members of the body, right? And so I've learned a lot. I long for hospitality as well, and I have that same longing, and I've learned a lot from reading your book. And we mentioned Christy Purifoy off topic earlier, and
Yes.
offline earlier, same thing. She does the same thing, and it's just that creating those havens together. And the fact that what I've loved is how you give us all permission to start small, like
Mm.
beaming. we don't have to set up a massive house that can have 20 guest rooms where we can overnight become hospitality experts. No, 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 no. We start by beaming. We start by what you call creating little scenes. So tell us about that, like the power of creating a little scene. It's one of the things you mentioned in the book.
Yes, I've always been drawn to this because even as a kid, I think, playing in the woods on my own, and or sometimes I could get a sister to come with me, but just trying to, like, what do you do in the wildness? Whether it's the woods, whether it's the wildness of your physical home right now or the city you live in, but it's you can't change everything. You can't solve everything or make everything spotless or beautiful, but I feel like if you just start with these moments and these little things, whether that's sometimes in our house, if we're going to bring somebody over, there's not the time for us to get the entire house ready, but there's time for a corner where we'll all be sitting. Or I talk a little bit about this event we do called Woman Camp. And it's, a few thousand women coming to this very rural place, which is, it's not, it's the Midwest. It's not beautiful. But we tried to transform it just with little scenes because that's really all that we can do. And so, just putting lavender in the portalettes to try to sort of just at least in the kind of largeness or the tackiness, like just to create like, okay, this is beautiful though. And so I like little scenes because I think that so often we might either say like we don't have the capacity and so we or the resources, and so then we end up staying behind closed doors, or not offering anything because we don't think it's going to be enough or it's not sustainable, or when we've tried it before it wiped out all of our energy, and so how could I possibly do that again? And this is kind of why I call it gentle hospitality or little scenes, because I think, we all, there are so many opportunities just in these sort of small organic to our lives and the resources that we have, whether that's time or relational, any of that, to just take these small steps into taking care of others.
Mm-mm. Again, thank you for the permission to do small things and to not believe the lie that it has to be big in order to be impactful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now, a brief message from Gospel Spice.
Did you know that Gospel Spice has a library of in-depth Bible studies available online for free? Discover our previous podcast studies on your own or with friends, and enjoy exclusive content that includes listening guides for each teaching episode, study questions, verses to memorize, tips, and more. Just visit gospelspice.com and click on the Studies tab. Now back to the podcast.
Now, back to the video.
So in a way, your book, which is so beautiful, truly. I mean, I've mentioned that, before we started recording, but this book, and I'm holding it up for those of us just listening, it is an absolutely gorgeous hardback. It truly, and you told me you're the one who basically designed it. Tyndale really gave you free rein to do anything you wanted. No wonder it's absolutely stunning, but it's a gorgeous piece of art. You were telling me, like, how was the process for you of creating this book and making this dream of yours come to life? How was that? And then I'll get back to how I think I would encourage people to use this book. But tell us about the process for you and what it was like to birth this beautiful object into the world.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. I loved doing it. I really, really loved it. And I think, as a writer, well, sort of in my experience and training, and I've gotten to always do a lot of partnership with artists and designers and photographers, and I've been very drawn in that direction. My mom was a fine artist, and so just having that kind of immersive experience. So like I've always wanted to write books, but I also wanted books with pictures. And I like words in the middle of a room, so always very like sort of atmospheric that way. And when I thought about this book, I just thought, I really believe that images and the way things feel on a page are very important to the actual message. And I felt like if I could sort of figure out how to make a book feel like a haven, then that would be a way for people to experience it themselves and then be able to take that outside, use it in their own lives. And so that was the goal. And yes, and Tyndale was incredibly trusting and so generous with me, and just, you know, allowed that creative freedom to pursue it. And I just picked kindred spirits to do the project with me. You know, I think that's so important. You talk about, you know, yourself and Christy, and I think like when people like they get it too, and they're, the way they do it might be different. Somebody might, you know, be behind a camera and I'm, you know, behind a typewriter, well, a keyboard. But still, like we're going after like the same thing. And so that was really fun. It's just to find people that like also got it and wanted to be a part of making it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so this book released just a few days ago on August 6th. Now it's in the hands of people. What do you want them to do with it?
I know, that's so wild that it's not just in my own hands. What do I want them to do with it? I mark it up, put a pen in it, turn down pages. I would hope that it feels like something that is like a true companion, you know, to your life. A lot of my friends are busy or full-time jobs or young moms, and so I hope that it's also the type of the book that you can just pick it up and turn to a page, and you don't have to read it all together. You can, you know, bit by bit, put it on your kitchen counter or the dash of your car, you know, that sort of thing. But I hope people just kind of live with it.
Mm-hmm. I hope so too. I don't think it's a book that needs to go on the shelf and be, you know, forgotten. I read it over the course of a few days because I kind of had to, but I wish I could have lingered over it a bit more. I told you I read it in France and it made me cry. It made me laugh. I did mark up the copy that I was using a lot. And so here's the thing, as I was listening to you, here's what I would like to do with a copy that I have. I don't know that I will actually do it, but here's my ambition. I would like to mark it up for my daughter. I would like to mark it up for her. She's 20 years old. And so she's dreaming. I think she has the gift of hospitality and she has the gift of beaming. She definitely does. She's a total beamer. I want to mark it up to say, hey, honey, this is a good idea. And here's what I hope it can look like in your life. And like marking maybe little prayers for her, or marking ways I've done what you've suggested in my own way that could be different. Maybe connecting the dots for her. Here's what Liz says she did. Here's what you've seen me do as your mother. Now make your own way through it, kind of thing. So that's a high, I don't know that I'll get to it, but maybe you can hold me accountable to it. And imagine, I don't know that she'll ever, you know, I don't know what kind of life the Lord is going to give her, but should she choose to have a family, maybe that could even be a wedding gift, you know, for her. Imagine that. I don't know. That's isn't that?
Yeah. I mean, now I'm getting my red nose again from tears. I think that's beautiful. And I would be so honored if you did do that and gave that to her.
So there you go. So even if I don't get to it, which I kind of would like to, maybe someone else can get to it and do that with, and it doesn't have to be your daughters. It can be your mothers. It could be a way to thank your mother for the way she created a haven in your life, right? As a daughter, maybe for a Mother's Day gift saying, hey, Mom, I saw you do this in your own way. Or, you know, it could be a friend, a sister, anyone at all. Doesn't even have to be a woman, even though I think women, we tend to relate to that a bit more. So actually, I was mentioning earlier how I was going to suggest to use these books. And this was not this wasn't what I had in mind. This just came to mind as you were talking. Here's what I think everyone who's really listening or watching this, what I would recommend you do. Get 2 copies, one for yourself so that you can mark it up or not. Again, it's such a beautiful book. It's hard to mark it up because it's so beautiful. But keep a copy for yourself. And I think the kitchen counter is a great space for that. My car dashboard is not big enough for that gorgeous but I don't know. and then buy another copy for a friend, maybe preferably someone who's not a Christian, because the way you weave the gentle hospitality of Christ in the book, without even naming him, I don't think you even name Christ. You ever name Christ himself, though I may have missed it. But you definitely mention God in a few places. But I think you are creating a gentle haven for people who come thirsty, tired, hungry, for them to put their feet up and receive gentleness. And this world needs it more than ever. And I think as Christians, what we can give to the world today is gentleness. And so let's do that. Let's give this book to a non-Christian friend as a token of gentleness, to invite them into a space where the deeper conversations can be held. Maybe, challenging one another to create that space of haven between those two, between you, the Christian, and the non-Christian friend. Create that haven together and then have those conversations. So that's my suggestion on how to use your beautiful, beautiful book. Because when we give a book to a friend, it can't be something ugly and nasty. It's got to be pretty. Because God hardwired us to enjoy beauty. So let's give them something beautiful to invite them closer to the kingdom.
I love that. I love it so much. And I think I appreciate you bringing that up. I've spent I worked for a church for a while. And then I also have been, I've been in the sort of corporate world as a freelancer, the secular world. And as like sort of growing up into that space, I've always been in both. And I mean, a lot of us are, but I think that I've talked to God about this, is just like how to both be in that space. And I think that in some ways I feel like he has shown me how to deliver his message even in an entirely secular space. And being like, I used to feel a little bit guilty about that, but I didn't say enough, or could I have, been like more. And I think what I'm feeling from the Lord is just like, no, this is a really important place to be able to invite people who are maybe not even seeking, or wouldn't know how to even say that they're seeking, but what they are, but they have these deep longings for something that they can't even maybe put words to. And so I like that tension. And I also feel that like even getting to talk on this podcast with you is just getting to then also put pieces around the book too, where I'm very directly like, I believe in Jesus Christ, and this is the foundation of where all of this is coming from. And it would never, I don't think it would ever have come out like this if I didn't have that foundation.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. As we end, so I'm going to have you back on the podcast in a few weeks, where I want to talk more about you personally and your own stories. But before we do that, you're saying how, very small things can lead to deeper conversations. And you mentioned your mom earlier, and how she has really been such a good role model for you, and how one day there was a blade of grass that made a lot of meaning to you, and how she used it to say so much to you. So as we end this first part of our conversation together, and again, you'll be back in a few weeks where we'll talk more about you personally and more of the personal stories that are in the book and about you. Tell us about Blades of Grass and what you learned from your mom that day.
Oh, she's wonderful. She actually lives right across from me. So I'm looking at her house as we talk. When I was little, we were sitting on a tree stump. We had just walked to a bakery, long walk to a bakery. And I have three sisters, and she just took the time for just me. And that, so already, it was meaningful. And we were sitting on a tree stump, and I was a pretty sensitive child and, dreamy, romantic. there was one blade of grass that had gotten missed by the mower, the city mower. And I felt sorry for it, that it had been missed and drawn to it. And so I asked my mom if I could take that blade of grass home with us. And so I picked it. And then then I was eating my pastry on the tree stump and had set it next to me and forgot to take it home. And we got all the way back home and I realized that I had left the blade of grass on the tree stump. And I told my mom, and she got her car keys and drove back to get the blade of grass. And I think that so profoundly showed me that you can love someone so deeply that you would just something so small as a blade of grass, that you would go and pick that up for your child and return it and speak to me of like such love. And I know that's what, this is like the story of God. This is what God, how he loves us too. And so for her to model that, it just, well, of course I'll never forget it. And I haven't. And I think we can all pick up each other's blades of grass sometimes, you lose something and you need it to be found, and we can help point each other or drive each other back to where that is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, love is always self-sacrificial, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, I think it might always be.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's so valuable.
Yeah.
All right, Liz, let's continue the conversation in a few weeks. I have so much more I want to discuss with you. Until then, I think the best way we can get ready for the second part of our conversation is for everyone to purchase that book, at least one copy, Let There Be Havens, so that by the time Liz and I continue this conversation, you will know a little more what we're talking about. And maybe between now and then, let us know by, email, DM, text, how you're using the book. I'd be so curious, and maybe hold me accountable to write my own version. Man, what am I committing to? What are you making me do, Liz?
I'm so excited. I will hold you accountable if you want me to.
Oh my goodness, that might be a bit much, but okay, let's talk about that. All right, so let's purchase Let There Be Havens. I'm telling you, this is one of the most beautiful books I've seen this year. No joke, it's truly gorgeous. And in this very hot month of August, where the whole world is on fire because of the Olympics taking place in France, and I took a stand on the internet recently about what's been going on, I think creating places of gentleness and unity is absolutely key. So Liz, let's talk again in a few weeks. Between now and then, let's create havens big and small. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
And now, a brief message from Gospel Spice.
Do you have an idea for a podcast but don't know where to start? Take our Podcasting 101 course with Stephanie Roussel, who shares with you her knowledge and tips to take your podcast from concept to reality. This 3-hour webinar is extremely practical and hands-on, providing you with the information that you need to start a podcast in just 30 days. Plus, the fee for this course is invested back to Gospel Spice. It's like your money gets multiplied. You get top-notch coaching while helping us spread the gospel. Go to gospelspice.com/podcasting for the details.
Thank you so much for watching today's episode. Merci. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and click that bell icon so you are the first to know when we release a new video or episode. Also, would you please consider helping us reach new people with the good news of the spice of the gospel by leaving a 5-star review for the Gospel Spice podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, iTunes, Google, etc. Finally, share and follow us on social media to spread the word of Gospel Spice. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to tune in our podcast with new episodes every Friday. I'll see you in our next video very soon, right here. Merci.